Hey, what's going on, anybody that's listening to this later? I will put a timestamp in the comments about when we started because I'm just trying to get everything dialed in. What's going on? We got we're already live streaming. Hold on. All right. And I can record with call recorder. All right. Welcome to the Watch and Talk. I'm Dylan Shuck. In this podcast, we're going to be reviewing Kingsman: The Golden Circle, as well as our top 5 espionage sequels. You can hear all of our previous reviews at thewatchandtalk.com. Big shout out to our Patreon supporters. If you want to be a supporter of the show, you can go to patreon.com/thewatchandtalk. And massive shout out to our premium supporters, Shakita, June, and Kaka. How you doing? How you doing, Chris? Have you been doing a lot of networking out there? So you didn't move there. You didn't move there just to network? Well, to add on to that, if you're looking just to social network, boy, do I have a solution for you. And that's CoinCrack. You can go to watchtalk.com/CoinCrack to boost your social media presence. Also, we are streaming the episodes live on YouTube. And people can't hear you on YouTube. They've just been hearing me talk to myself. And I will fix that right now. Paul, thank you for the heads up for that. Yeah, there we go. You can, they'll be able to hear you now. Chris, thanks for the heads up.
Hi guys, what's going on?
Yeah, let me do a timestamp on that. All right. Yeah, so the reason I say it is if you want to check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel, just search for The Watch and Talk on YouTube. And you can listen to us live stream the episodes, join in the conversation, and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, make sure to check that out. And if you hear us refer to somebody in the chat, that's what we're meaning by somebody on YouTube chatting along with us live. All right, let's talk about what we watched recently.
Definitely, let's do it.
Speaking of which, did you end up watching Mother?
I have not gotten around to it. I had a wedding that weekend, so I was completely swamped and haven't been able to do it, which is a bummer because I've heard lots of very interesting, polarizing opinions, which makes me actually want to watch it all the more.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It should make you.
Generally speaking, did you like it or did you hate it? Where were you at?
I'm more indifferent to it. I wasn't
Okay.
offended by it, but I wouldn't. I will never watch it again.
Okay, fair enough.
But
And are you a fan of Aronofsky? Like, do you like Black Swan or anything like that?
sure.
Okay.
But this made me realize I had a gaping hole in Aronofsky, which is the film Noah that came out in 2014, which seemed so unlike him to make this big special effects extravaganza, right? And so after watching Mother, and Mother has a bunch of kind of it's kind of a biblical story in itself.
I've been told, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So it made me interested all the more to go back and rewatch Noah with the context of Mother in my mind. And have you seen Noah?
I have actually, and
Okay.
I remember that year Exodus: Gods and Kings came out as
Right.
well as Noah,
Right.
and I hated Exodus: Gods and Kings,
Right.
and I actually found myself kind of enjoying Noah, if only because I personally felt like I was able to recognize what you didn't, which was I can still see Aronofsky in amongst the special effects extravaganza. There was
There was
a level,
a ton of Aronofsky amongst it.
yeah, there was just a level of like heartbreak and angst, and I mean that in the best possible way in that film with the kind of the post traumatic stress that Noah was undergoing, and this feeling of what have I done, and yeah, I felt like
Also, the I don't know who I want to win situation. Like you're like I don't know who I'm rooting for right now because these are all terrible situations that are happening. Like there's a villain on board of the ship, and I almost want him to win because I don't want Noah to, because what Noah wants to do is terrible, and it really is putting it to the max where Noah really felt that and to my understanding is not a part of the biblical tale, but apparently Noah believed that it was supposed to be the extinction of the human race, like the humans weren't supposed to survive it. So then he decides to take actions to make sure, ensuring that instead of seeing the miracle that happens before them of potential of a pregnancy as being a miracle and being like that means it's God's will for humanity to survive, seeing it as them betraying God, which obviously made a ton of moral conundrums that happened because of that. So it was incredibly riveting, and I have to say that I couldn't stop thinking about it.
yeah, no,
I don't.
absolutely, and that for me was the coolness of that story, just because it is so close to what was documented, and yeah, there is so much gray and questions and struggle, and it was cool that someone was willing to kind of like take that head on and not just sugarcoat it as the Sunday school version that kids often get. So yeah, I appreciated that.
Yeah, it was a pretty brutal movie, and I have to say if this is something that kind of because it came out the same year as Ex's Gods and Kings, and that one was received so poorly, I was this movie I completely slept on, completely ignored, and then after watching Mother, I felt like I needed to go back and really get an understanding of who Darren Aronofsky is as a religious man, which he has to be. I haven't heard him speak on it, but he has to be with after watching. There's no way that he's an atheist. Takes on new projects that Mother in.
Definitely, definitely.
So then I also went to a midnight screening of The Room, and I talked about that last week because we did it
Yes.
before we actually went to go do it. I have to tell everybody it is one of the most incredible film experiences I've ever had. It's so much fun. You're just yelling. Everyone's just yelling at the theater the entire time. It was so hilarious. There's obviously the plastic spoon situation, which is they have a bunch of pictures of spoons, just in their living room, just some stock photos of spoons, and every time a spoon comes on screen, everyone throws plastic spoons all around the theater. There was thousands and thousands of plastic spoons on the floor. It was like Scrooge McDuck's vault of coins, with plastic spoons on the floor as we get up to go. A lot of people were actually sweeping up spoons and putting them into boxes to bring them back, obviously, for the next showing. I know I'm going to go to every showing of The Room every time it happens now because it was just so so much fun. I lost my voice from yelling during it and laughing, and it was an incredible film experience. I just have to say, and especially as Disaster Artist is going to be coming out, and I'm sure it's going to popularize it even more. I'm planning on going to every screening. And anybody check out, your local random one screen theaters that do like the Rocky Horror Picture Show or anything like that. They're probably doing screenings of The Room also, which was a lot of fun, and it was really fun to do here in San Diego.
Yeah, I actually embarrassingly have never seen this film. I've seen probably
Embarrassingly, oh come
yeah.
on, that's
Well,
so
it's
embarrassing.
well for me anyways. Like going through college, all of my friends worship this film, and they were constantly talking about it and rewatching it, and I just missed the bandwagon. Partially because I oftentimes don't enjoy films that are quote unquote so bad they're good. However, I have experienced some films, especially with like Riff Tracks or Mystery Science Theater 3000, that I have enjoyed. Though I will say, I probably have seen, no joke, a quarter to a half of this film just through different clips I've
Yeah,
watched on YouTube,
yeah.
and it lives up to the legend. It's amazing how bad it is.
No, but
And
it's like it's so perplexing when you watch it because you're thinking, how could they possibly have thought this was like? And it should be studied. Like I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it actually should be studied because it's not like people are making these mistakes in movies. Like this movie came out in 2003. It looks like it came out in 1990, and it's cheesier than a 1990 movie going through this TV film, and it's just so insane. And seeing it with people, they point out everything. They point out everything, and it is it's a lot of fun. It's worthy of watching. I hadn't seen it all the way through either. I have just like you. I have seen so many clips of it, and I have so much of it memorized. So I was ready, prepared with plenty of the lines, but. I had not seen it all the way through until I saw it like this. Now, when you do see it this way, you're gonna miss a ton of it because you can't hear everything over all the screaming that's happening.
it
But
sounds like delightful fun. I am so looking forward to the Disaster Artist, though. I feel like the trailers have been really promising. And one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Tim Burton films is Ed Wood. And it seems to kind of explore the same idea of sometimes passion and love for something isn't enough to make it good.
yeah,
So
surprisingly.
I'm really looking forward to that.
So then also I watched to prepare for for the Kingsman sequel. I rewatched the original Kingsman,
Hey.
and I guess we'll talk about that when we come to the review. Nathan For You is back on Comedy Central, and it comes back with this hilarious montage episode. I guess it's not technically back until next week, and then this is just like a montage of when they retouched back with a bunch of people from some of the previous seasons. For those of you who don't know what Nathan For You is, it's kind of like a business makeover show, in the same vein as kind of similar to Shark Tank, except it's more like a bar rescue where somebody's going to the business and evaluating it and seeing how they can help your business and all that kind of stuff. Except it's a joke, it's a parody show, and the main character who does it is so good at this awkward like character that he plays that it's just so magnetic to watch. It's just so engaging because I just can't stop watching him to see how he's going to deal with things. He's also really childish. He's also really I don't know. He's proud in a weird way. He's so hard to explain as a character, but it's hilariously engaging to watch. And I don't watch a lot of just silly comedy shows. And Nathan For You is absolutely one that everybody should be watching. Have you ever watched Nathan For You?
I have not watched it, nor have I even heard of it. So I like the intriguing pitch.
It's on Comedy Central.
10-4.
I highly recommend checking it out, Chris. They're half-hour episodes, and you'll know right off the bat if you like it or if. And then lastly, I went and watched the new David Gordon Green film called Stronger with Jake Gyllenhaal. And the plot summary for Stronger is the inspiring real life story of Jeff Bauman, an ordinary man who captured the hearts of his city and the world to become a symbol of hope during the infamous 2013 Boston Marathon bombings.
That's
So,
out now.
yep,
I
that's out.
just wow, I missed that.
It's out in
How was it?
theaters at this point. So, so basically, Jake Gyllenhaal plays a man who goes to see his actually on and on off again girlfriend, who's running the Boston Marathon, and he ends up happening to standing right next to where one of the bomb goes off, and it completely shreds his legs, and then he loses them completely. So it happens very early on in the movie. There's not a lot of setup before it happens, and the rest of the time it's dealt with him dealing with it, him dealing with the post traumatic stress of it, him dealing with he's an unremarkable man, and all of a sudden he's called a hero, and he's like, why am I a hero? So he's constantly dealing with why people are looking at him as a symbol, and he's ignoring it in general, and he kind of goes on a downward spiral because of it. I have to say, it's an incredibly moving movie. I pretty much started getting teared up in the first 10 or 15 minutes, and maybe had a half-hour period in the middle where I didn't, where he started becoming almost an unlikable person. But that was a part of his story. That was a part of his journey as he traveled along. It's one of my favorite movies of the year so far. I highly recommend anybody go
Wow.
check this
Oh,
out,
I'll check
especially
it out.
anybody that gonna be from Boston or anything like that. I think it's a kind of a love story to Boston. Uh, the second Boston marathon bombing film, person being Patriots Day from last year. Neither of them disappointed. They're both pretty fantastic. So I highly recommend it. There's a chance this is like my top 10 of the. Right now, it's definitely in the top. So I highly recommend it, and anybody gets a chance to go see it. If there's any way that I can get together to make it work, we might do a review for the podcast, but I don't know if that's going to happen. So I figured I give it an A minus. Anyway,
Awesome.
Chris, what about you?
I've been watching a fair number of movies recently just because I have classes to prepare for and films I like to discuss with my students, which has been an absolute joy. So just run back through a few. I recently rewatched all of the Dark Knight trilogy, which was fantastic, especially with Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. Those movies are so impeccably well made. And The Dark Knight Rises continues to frustrate me, although I completely understand kind of where I feel like Nolan was at trying to construct that story. And I actually ended up kind of appreciating it more, as well as being more frustrated by it. I also went back and rewatched Peter Jackson's very first film. It's called Bad Taste. He was very much inspired back in 1987 when this film came out by films like Evil Dead from Sam Raimi. And kind of just wanted to make an over-the-top, silly splatter flick, and he did indeed do that over a 4-year period of time. He started in 1983 making the film and finished it in 87. He basically endeavored initially to shoot a short film and just kept on shooting and shooting and shooting until he had first feature film. If you love Lord of the Rings and King Kong or any of his other more recent films, this film, in a lot of kind of aesthetic ways, is in no way similar, or I guess more narrative ways, it's in no way similar. But actually, in the aesthetics and in some of the kind of visual choices, the camera work, the tone, even, you can definitely see the same zany filmmaker kind of getting his feet wet. So that was a lot of fun. I also rewatched Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, which is one of my favorite films of all time. It's amazing. It's stupid how young Spike Lee was when he made this, and the fact that he acted in it and wrote it and really kind of brought this community together to make it. It was, yeah, it's an outstanding behind-the-scenes journey as well.
I don't think I've seen Do the Right Thing. I don't remember almost any of it, and I recently bought it on Vudu, so I plan to go back and watch it, but I just haven't.
Do it.
I fully plan.
And then I also rewatched Anna Karenina from Joe Wright. And as you guys know, both Dylan and I are big Joe Wright fans. Do you like Anna Karenina specifically, Dylan?
I mean, not as much as Atonement or anything like that.
Sure.
It's just I don't know. It's a little too classical for me, I guess.
Okay.
Not
Sure.
that I'm against it or anything like that. But it's nothing like Atonement is.
Yeah, totally.
And
For me, just
really looking forward to
artistically.
The Darkest Hour, by the way.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh, bring that to my life. I need that palate cleanser too after Pan. Um, Pan was another Joe Wright film that came
Was
out a couple.
universally panned.
Aha, aha. Even by Joe Wright lovers like Dylan and I. But Anna Karenina is just a beautiful film to look at, and production design wise and cinematography wise, if for no other reason, is a marvel. I also rewatched American Graffiti from George Lucas, which is just such a fun film. If you've never seen any other George Lucas films beyond Star Wars, do yourself a favor and see what else the man is capable of by watching American Graffiti. It's quite outstanding. And then finally, I actually went back to the theaters for the 40th anniversary release of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. First time I'd seen that Steven Spielberg film on the big screen, and it really is made for that. Good gracious. The photography, the sound, the colors, the music, it's all so good. And it's just this stupid reminder of how brilliant Spielberg was so early on in his career. So yeah, that's what I've been up to recently.
All right, let's jump ahead to our top five, which is our top five espionage sequels. I didn't. This list, putting this together, wasn't as fun as I expected it to be. Do you agree?
You put it on yourself. For me, it was difficult because, as we'll get into it, there is one genre in particular that has a lot of sequels. So,
Even one
picking and choosing.
franchise. One franchise.
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of the great, espionage movies, are standalone. They aren't franchises. I have to say, like, for instance, I originally I was for some reason thought Hunt for October was a sequel to Patriot Games or whatever, but it came out before Patriot Games or Clear and Present Danger. So I originally had that in my list and had to take it off at the last minute, which is
Shake your fist.
unfortunately going to claim ignorance, but couldn't do it. So I have no honorable mentions, and yeah, like you said, there is one franchise that has all the sequels in it, and I have two of them on here, but I didn't want to just keep listing all of them, but it was kind of impossible not to. But anyway, do you have any honorable mentions? Obviously you don't.
I do, yeah. I have a few honorable mentions just throughout.
Okay.
Do you not have any?
I have none.
Oh, okay, cool. So again, obviously the franchise that Dylan and I are alluding to is James Bond, obviously. And I honestly don't think that I'm as big of a James Bond fan as I even sometimes believe that I am, because I look at the list and I go, oh, that one's okay. Oh, that was okay. Oh, that one's okay. So the few, though, that I do feel like I could rewatch again and enjoy, a couple of them made the honorable mention list, one of which I think Dylan might be shocked by, that it's so low. And so one of them was The Spy Who Loved Me, Roger Moore. It's one of the classics, the introduction of Jaws.
I don't think I've ever seen that one.
For me, it's the best that Roger Moore gets. It possesses his jokiness, but his charm, as well as a pretty solid, tight plot. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I also included Skyfall down in my honorable mentions. The more times that I watch this film, the more that it kind of falls down for me. I think visually it's a almost perfect film. Roger Deakins and Sam Mendes just knocked it out of the park visually. But narratively, like so many Bond films, it tends to sag a little bit. And there's, for me, a couple of kind of off-color moments that even for a Bond film, and more especially for a Bond film in the modern era, that was like, ooh, that's just tonally weird and kind of off-putting. But nonetheless, it's still a lot of fun. And then I also included the fifth Mission Impossible, which in and of itself is ridiculous that this franchise continues to be as good as it is. And humorously, I feel like in a lot of ways, there is an argument to be made that Rogue Nation's actually the best all around of the Mission Impossible films. It possesses excellent action. It possesses a solid screenplay. It possesses some interesting character dynamics. But for me, the spectacle of another one is just a little bit higher, and that's why I included it as low as it was on the list. So yeah, those are my honorable mentions.
All right, I'll start off with my number 5, which is Goldfinger. That's kind of the Sean Connery James Bond that kind of embodies all of his James Bond to me. Not that I've seen all of his James Bonds or anything like that, but that's just one that I was connected. Goldfinger.
Goldfinger is also my number five. So funny. Yeah, for me, when I think of Sean Connery and I think of the best of Sean Connery in James Bond, I think of this film. You have over the top villains in Goldfinger. You have Oddjob in there. It's a lot of fun, but it possesses too a surprising amount of energy and kind of a propulsive plot for a film that came out in that decade. And Sean Connery, he's the original, and though not my favorite, he defined the character in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways launched the franchise that has been able to continue as long as it has.
So my number 4 is Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. This is one that stuck with me a lot. I
Why
really
not?
enjoyed it many, many times. Why not? It's obviously it's a mock up of a lot of these spy movies, but it was hilarious at the time. While I hate when a sequel comes and reuses a lot of the same jokes from the first one, which unfortunately they did. I think they brought enough fresh stuff into it, like Fat Bastard and stuff like that, that made it enough to have its own vibe to it, which I appreciate.
For sure. I finally got around to watching the first and second Austin Powers. I haven't yet watched Goldmember, but they are a lot of fun. I'll give you that for sure. My number 4 is the fourth Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol. And actually, narratively, the script on this is kind of a bit lazy. The more that I watch it, the more I'm like, ooh, that wasn't that well written. However, I would contend that Brad Bird, its director, who came from animation previously, The Incredibles and The Iron Giant, just knocked it out of the park with some amazing visual spectacle. And his use of the IMAX camera during the Dubai sequence and climbing the huge building is just it's just awe-inspiring and so entertaining. And he certainly was doing something different with the franchise than had come in the previous 3 films. And just, yeah, I mean, those sequences are some of the best action sequences that I'd seen in a long time and really do hold up a lot. So just for the sake of the spectacle and what Brad Bird was able to pull off, I felt like it deserved that number 4 spot.
My number 3 is my introduction to the James Bond franchise, so it always had a special connection with me. Also had a very, very popular video game that I spent so much of my life playing. That's GoldenEye. It was the first Pierce Brosnan James Bond movie, and it will always have a special place to me. Obviously, the franchise. I know a lot of people don't love any of these Pierce Brosnan James Bonds, but if you ask me, I'd take GoldenEye over any of the Daniel Craig James by leaps and bounds.
GoldenEye is amazing, and you will definitely see that on my list coming up here in a little bit. But for my number 3, I think this actually probably will be a little bit higher for Dylan if I'm thinking correctly, but it's the Bourne Ultimatum. I think the Bourne Ultimatum was a fantastic end to the Bond franchise. Yes, it's the end. There's no more beyond it. No, I'm not going to be like that. There is more, and they unfortunately stumbled quite poorly. But the Bourne Ultimatum for me was I loved the Bourne Identity, Doug Liman's first film, and I thought the Bourne Supremacy was a really strong sequel. I felt like Paul Greengrass's kind of shaky cam style was a little bit more annoying than I wanted it to be, and I felt like he kind of course corrected slightly and brought the camera back a little bit wider and kept his cuts a little bit longer, and just, delivered some amazing action set pieces, as well as surprisingly continued to pull back layers of this man's psyche and past without it feeling kind of cliche and like, oh, of course, and there's one more thing that he hadn't remembered previously, which is really difficult if that in fact is the kind of the centerpiece of your franchise. And I thought he was able to pull it off quite well, and it did feel like it was a nice conclusive ending to all that had come before. So, yeah, that's my number 3.
Completely with you, and you said it best as far as that goes. Did you ever see Jason Bourne?
I did, yeah. I think we reviewed it together, didn't we?
No, I think you didn't make it for the review, but
okay, yeah. I reviewed it on the Heartbeat, and
yeah,
I did not like it. I did not like it at all.
Yeah, when that there's a problem when you're spy agency has covert ops file on their computer.
Right.
I'll never get over that moment of being like, seriously, they have a folder called covert ops. But yeah, it is. I honestly like The Bourne Legacy better than Jason Bourne by
Mm.
leaps and bounds, just because it has that one workplace shooting scene that was just so chilling, that stuck with me so much. I know a lot of people don't necessarily love that movie, but it stuck with me. Anyway, but that's my number 2 as well.
Oh, awesome. My number 2 is Casino
Oh, my
Royale.
number 2.
I really enjoyed this film. I think the biggest problem that it has going against it is a problem that almost every single Bond film has, except for something like Quantum of Solace, because they realized they had bad film on their hand and they cut it down, which is it's just a little bit too long. I think Casino Royale has one too many kind of twists and turns and rabbit trails. But at the same time, I felt like it was the quote unquote answer to the success that Jason Bourne was getting, and wanting to be kind of cool and gritty and then switch things up from what we got later on in Pierce Brosnan's career. And I thought it did it pretty successfully. I think Martin Campbell, the director who also did GoldenEye, is a fantastic director, at least has been on a number of films. And yeah, I mean, I think Daniel Craig was really excellent. I could sense him just being hungry and desiring to prove himself. This is kind of his big shot to make a name for himself. And he wasn't yet bored with the character, or at least ways he didn't feel like he was bored. And yeah, solid film.
And my number 1 is one you mentioned already. Obviously, that's going to happen by this point. I think maybe that's Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation. I didn't want to put Hunt for Red October as my number 1, but seeing as that's the first one of the Jack Ryan movies, I couldn't. But Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation is everything that I love about Mission Impossible. It actually reinvigorated my love. I hadn't yet gotten over we're to the point where we've kind of forgiven Tom Cruise. He went nuts, but then he came back and he just worked. And he works super super hard. I saw some behind the scenes of The Mummy and seeing some of him just swimming underwater in this underwater tomb situation. And he has scuba riders around him with air tanks, but he is doing a risk and he's working really hard on it, and you see that in a lot of his work. He's even when the movie sucks, like Man, The Mummy sucked, he's still engaging. He still helps make it engaging. I'm super excited about American Made next week. Just
Me too. Really excited.
I don't know why, but I just I'm back on the Tom Cruise train, and you know what put me back on it was Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation. It was one of the first. It was early on days of doing movie review podcasts. When that was one of the first movie review podcasts I did. It was one of my first A minus, something like that. It was one of my favorite movies of the year. I think it ended up making my honorable mentions, but I regret putting in my top 10 list Mad Max Fury Road. I know that's insane. I know everybody loves it, and I like Mad Max Fury Road. But you know what? In the long run, Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation meant more to me in the long run. So I just wish I edged that one as my number 10, and I just had on Mad Max Fury Road as an honorable mention. But I felt like I was going to be universally chastised if I didn't have that in my just like I feel like I'm going to get chastised right now. But but that was a learning experience for me to remember just go with my gut when I'm making these lists, regardless of what I think people think I need to have on my list. Anyway, Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation is in my opinion the best Mission Impossible movie, and the franchise keeps better.
Always go with your gut. Yeah, so I always like making my lists at the end of the year, labeled not best films of the year, but favorite films of the year. Yeah. Yeah, my number 1 is also a film that Dylan mentioned, and that's GoldenEye.
Ooh.
For me personally, my James Bond is Pierce Brosnan. And again, this is my personal opinion. I feel like he's the perfect combination of suave, tough as nails. Yeah, he's definitely a very attractive man. And he's also has the kind of a bit of a quirk to him. He's able to do some of the things that Roger Moore was able to do. And so the fact he's kind of able to bring all those tones together in a really cohesive way and make a film and be in a film like GoldenEye, which
And
is, in
he's
my opinion,
extremely sexy.
this is true. This is true. I mean, look at the guy. He's the dark hair.
He's a
Just
good-looking man. I just want to make sure that's been said.
Yeah, it's true. But
that
yeah,
had
I mean,
had a great villain too. That had Sean Bean did. Spoiler alert. But just a great typical, not typical, but just a perfect James Bond story and personal stakes, and and great random characters like Boris. I'm invincible.
Yeah. Yes. Alan Cummings, so good.
Random catchphrase that wasn't trying too hard and it worked, and it just I love it. And Famke Jensen is so good in that also. It's just everything is great. Everything is great about that movie, and shout out to the video game also. Also,
yes. Oh gosh, that's a shout out to our generation specifically.
Also, Pierce Brosnan's an incredibly good looking man. Shakid in the chat said extremely sexy, LOL. So we'd want to make sure to mention that.
Just make sure that the listener knows how Dylan feels about Pierce Brosnan.
All right, let's get to our review of Kingsman: The Golden Circle. The plot summary of the film is: when their headquarters are destroyed and the world is held hostage, the Kingsman journey leads them to the discovery of an allied spy organization in the U.S. These two elite organizations must band together to defeat a common enemy. All right, so why don't we first talk about our relationship with the original film and where we stand on that before we even get into it.
Yeah, sure. Would you like me to go first?
Yes, absolutely, Chris. You get to go first.
Yeah, it's funny.
Before you say that, I do have to say Pierce Brosnan is a really good-looking, attractive actor, still to this day.
Wait, who's this? Who's this?
Pierce Brosnan?
Oh yeah, of course. Well, I should have known. I mean, when I say attractive actor, I should have instantly just thought the attractive actor.
Yes.
I watched the original Kingsman, and I watched it after kind of the hype train of people just thinking that it was the coolest thing ever, and so I kind of went in a little bit dubious, like, okay, let's see if this thing really lives up. And I'll say right now, stylistically, Matthew Vaughn knows how to make a very cool film, and does so with a lot of visual pizzazz, where he's able to put together these action sequences and camera moves within those action sequences that are just kind of awe-inspiring. It takes so much time and effort to shoot action the way that he does, and very few directors bother to do so. And his action sequences in the first Kingsman especially were just awesome. He also was able to infuse really cool villains like Sofia Boutella. Is that her name? She played the Mummy in Tom Cruise's The Mummy.
Yes.
Yeah. She had like the cool, kind of kangaroo mechanical legs, which were these terrifying weapons, as well as, jumping apparatuses. And then he got the performance that he did out of Samuel L. Jackson, who I love Samuel L. Jackson, but I think he can, a lot of times these days, phone it in. And I saw him trying to do something fun and quirky and different, and I thought it worked. And I thought Taron Egerton was kind of a revelation. I thought this guy's a superstar in the making right there. I loved his dynamic with Colin Firth. The ending of the film, I'll just briefly say a slight spoiler. There's a sequence, the church sequence, as everyone says. I won't actually spell out exactly what happens in it. But for me, that's where Matthew Vaughn's style kind of hit a massive problem, which was, you do realize this is a horrible, horrible, evil thing that's happening, Matthew Vaughn, right? Because you're making it like a rock concert, and you're making me think it's really cool. Why am I feeling like this is really cool? Because this is like the worst point of the film.
I appreciate the bonkersness of it, though.
Sure,
I appreciate the stance.
For me, that was the wrong place to be bonkers and have fun. That was the wrong place to bring in the Freebird, guitar solo and have a really, epic oneer where this person's just killing a bunch of innocent people. For me,
to end it with a character that you don't expect to die, this ain't that kind of movie to happen, was a good shocking moment, because I don't think anybody expected.
Definitely. So yeah, for me, the first Kingsman, again, stylistically and with the acting was outstanding. I was a little bit off put by some of the tonal choices, but not enough for me to hate the film.
Um, yeah. So for me, I felt like what this movie had the best of was it just had simplicity. I felt like it didn't have an overly convoluted plot that you had to intently follow. Right? Samuel L. Jackson's character, I think, was perfect. They accomplished exactly what they were trying to do from him. Just make it him weird enough, have these weird quirks enough that he can't stand violence. He can't stand the sight of blood. He even shoots somebody at one scene and their brains splatter everywhere, and he turns around and pukes because he is so queasy by the sign of blood. To the point where people have to, he has to walk out of a room after a bunch of people are murdered in it. He has to, they have to, like the people he hires have to cover up the bodies so he can walk by because he can't stand to look at it. I just love the little quirks like that, and obviously Sophia Boutella's character in there as well. Just having this, like you said, spring-loaded scissor feet that she's cut people in half with, and there's obviously surprising deaths that happen in the movie over and over and over again. From the very beginning of the movie, there's surprise deaths. You think a character's going to be a main character. Nope. Oh, nope, he's dead. And then you think somebody else is the main character, and nope, they're dead. And it's just in a very Game of Thrones way. You never know who is safe, at least in the first film. So I thoroughly enjoyed the first one. I think it's really good. And we'll see where I stand on.
The suspense is killing me.
Go ahead and say your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I'll
just so everybody knows, we'll do non-spoiler reviews. So if you haven't seen the movie, it's safe to listen to. I should have said this already. And then we'll have a spoiler section at the end. So we're gonna give our basic reviews. We won't even spoil something that's in the trailer that is just so mind-numbingly stupid that it's in the freaking trailer. I cannot get over it. But anyway. We won't even spoil that thing. I know I'm assuming you know what I'm talking about, Chris.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And we'll say our letter grades, and we'll switch to the spoiler section. So if you haven't seen the movie, it's safe to listen.
So I'll just continue to praise the movie for a second, in the sense that Matthew Vaughn, the director who also directed the original, continued to direct the sequel. He just knows how to construct a really fantastically fun action set piece, and he also knows how to do it in a way that that tells you right off the bat that the tone of this film is one that is light and over the top and fun, and just have fun with it. There's a car chase in the opening parts of this film that, with the action choreography and the style and the aesthetic that he was going for, honestly was not that far off from something in the super stylized Wachowski's Speed Racer. It just really was over the top in the specific pieces of action that were being done in and on and around this car were just so heightened and over the top.
It showed them drifting, him drifting for a good 25 seconds in one scene.
Right, and then like there's a moment in the trailer even where he springs off a door, which that door is then completely obliterated by a passing car, and does this swan dive back on top of the car, and then at one point the door is knocked off, and he's kind of skateboarding, and it's really over the top, but for me just instantly very fun. And you could tell too that Vaughn was doing his best this entire way through this film to compete with the action. And also the quirky tone of the first one. So instead of Samuel L. Jackson, we had Julianne Moore coming in, and she. I'll get more into how I feel about her character later, but I will say I liked, generally speaking, this kind of motherly approach that she took to her villain character. Because again, it was kind of quirky and unique, and I'm like, okay, I can see what you're trying to do here, trying to be different, trying to compete with Mr. Jackson. I got it. And then yeah, there was some newer characters that were introduced later, the statesman characters, that in their introductions specifically, I'm like, okay, this is a different energy. I mean, obviously, American versus British, there's a slightly different energy going on there, and I appreciated that. But honestly, from there, I felt like the film ran out of new ideas after about 15 minutes. And from there, it proceeded to repeat those same ideas over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And the action set pieces that I was just praising, would just be recycled. I mean, yes, they were set in different locations. They had slightly different weapons, but the way that they were shot was identical. We even got, a long oneer fight scene at the very end just to compete with that church sequence, obviously, from the first film.
I have to say there was a ski lift action set piece that that actually had me semi-excited. I have to say,
sure. Yep.
I had a semi-chub one.
There was something unique about that one, to be sure, and even the new statesman characters, which potentially promised to bring a different energy to the film, ultimately fought and their action sequences were shot in a similar enough way to what we'd seen from the Kingsman, from this film and the previous film, that was like, okay, and this is exactly the same. And then like the Julianne Moore character, which initially was kind of fun and quirky, ended up just being this really kind of toothless, like she wasn't very threatening to me, villain that wanted a ridiculous thing. And by ridiculous, I'm not even like trying to make some sort of political statement. You know what I mean when you'll see the film, but just in the sense of like there was no real stakes or threat to it. And then some of the really ridiculous, over the top political satire was more eye rolling than anything. It's like, I see what you're poking fun of here. That's very very clever.
Also,
but it wasn't.
I have to say, this shows you what a different day and age we live in right now, where you can't see a president on a movie at this point without immediately, like, I remember the second they said, "Oh, he's the president," and it just didn't work because of the situation we have in real life in the White House. They can never top that.
Stranger than fiction, yeah.
Yeah, right. They can't ever top that. So having the president as a character in a movie now is really tough. It just immediately was setting me back, and a distraction, being like, what are they doing? Where are they going with this? How are they going to do this? What are they going to do? Are they going to make a Trump joke? No, they're not making a Trump joke. Oh, what are they? It's like, it was an interesting situation that we have. And this isn't a knock on the movie. This is just a knock on the real world that we live in. That it's so different. This is one of the first movies that I've seen that had its own president in that role or whatever, and it's just, that was for me.
Yeah, and for me it was just kind of instantly old hat and tired, and no way as terrifying or ridiculous as what is in reality. And then like specifically for the villain character too, there seemed to be such an intention on being quirky and unique that they just took all this time for these elaborate joke setups that ultimately had these punchlines that were like, yep, I saw that coming. Why didn't you just deliver that punchline a while ago? So clever. Ha 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 ha. And then two,
she was almost doing a Samuel L. Jackson impression also.
Yeah, I mean, she was so desperately trying to be quirky.
Yes.
And what
something
for me
that
initially
so naturally worked with Samuel L. Jackson's character in the original.
Yeah, and I thought it could have naturally worked. Like for me, the first scene was like, okay, like this could potentially be interesting, but ultimately was like, oh, and they gave her nothing interesting to do.
Yep.
And then two, this film so desperately tried to recapture a certain dynamic from the first film that for me was this just like huge slap in the face to what happened in the first film, and a real waste of our time, because it just, again, not only were we retreading the same things in this film, we were retreading the same things from the previous film. And it was like, we've seen this dynamic already. And the way that, and I'll explain more of this in the spoiler section, but the way that dynamic played out in certain beats that were played in it, was like, and they're probably going to do something like that to bring that person back, or to do that. And it just felt so predictable. Which is a bummer, because I could feel Vaughn like, oh, I want to up the stakes, I want to up the ante, I want to make this thing more intense and dramatic. But ultimately didn't. There was one sequence that I'd like to mention where Mark Strong, who I love, sang a song, and I couldn't help myself, but I'm like, this is great. I just like it when characters sing and there was epic music.
Have you realized how many times that song? It's the song's Country Roads.
With Channing Tatum, by the way.
Also,
in Logan Lucky.
In 2017, also Alien Covenant. It was Danny McBride's song in Alien Covenant that he sang. That's
right. You know what? I bet you anything. There's probably it's probably a royalty free song. Like, it's probably like
I guarantee you that it just came. It just expired or whatever. So movies just went crazy. 3 wide release movies: Logan Lucky, Kingsman: The Golden Circle, and Alien Covenant all used it this year within the past 3 months. It's just pretty insane. I was like, really? Are you serious? I guess it's not 3 months. I guess it's more like 4. Sorry.
So yeah, I mean, all that to say that the film far too quickly bored me and kind of just drug on too long, which is a shame because again, Matthew Vaughn is an excellent stylist and knows how to pack a punch, quite literally, with his action sequences. But when you only have so many tricks in a bag, those tricks become pretty old pretty quick. So yeah, for all these reasons, I'm going to give the film a C.
So it tried to do. It just felt like it was trying to up the ante from the first one, right? And that doesn't mean add. That doesn't mean adding more characters. You're gonna get the same results. I feel like I gave a perfect example of a sequel that did rehash a couple jokes, but for the most part, it 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 had a fresh new take of a list of jokes to tell with Aspire Shag Me. I don't think so much about Goldmember, the last one, but at least the second one was a good example. This I just felt like was a rehash of the first one in a lot of ways. Um, I felt like it completely goes away from the simplicity of the original, and it's way over convoluted. There are way too many famous people in here, and some of them you're like, why did they need to put them in there? There's very similar to Logan Lucky for me, where I was like, they did not need to have this person in there. They just put it so they could put them in the credits.
Huh.
But Julianne Moore for me was awful, cringeworthy, doing a Samuel L. Jackson impression. Basically, her intro was so heavy-handed, trying to show her ruthlessness. She was not only, which I think just trying to capture the quirkiness of Samuel L. Jackson, but she was also like a retread of Margot Martindale's character in Justified and Ann Dowd's character in The Leftovers. They were trying to go for that vibe with her, which I just don't think that she was able to nail very well.
Interesting. It's an interesting comparison. I like it.
Also, Elton John. Man,
I wasn't going to spoil it, but yeah.
He was working for a lot of the audience in here for me, but wasn't just did not really work as much for me. It's I mean it's not the worst thing in the world. It could have been way worse, but it was just weird, and we'll talk about that more in spoilers. There's some interesting transitions though in this. There's a scene where it shows a weed nug and it zooms in on it, and it transitions to a forest, and it does it so seamlessly. I was really impressed with it. It looked really freaking good. And
But for me, those cool transitions became tired so fast.
Yeah, they did.
Every single opportunity he had to transition some cool way was taken.
I don't disagree with it. I just at least was especially interested in that one. Got to give a shout out to JB, the dog named JB after Jack Bauer, not James Bond, not Jason Bourne. As I said in the first one, got a big shout out to that because I love it. But in general, I'm not offended by this movie at all. It's forgettable. I don't hate it. I'm not like mad at it. I didn't walk away hating it, but I just wasn't. I don't know. It seemed to me like it was even had a different director. I didn't look up the director before the movie, and then once I saw Matthew Vaughn again, I was like, that's surprising to me because it just felt like another director was like, oh, I see what you did. I'm going to do more of that. And like I said, there's plenty of actors that are put in this that just overcomplicate things that they don't need to. There's like 7 different plots going on at the same time, and for instance, the character, I'm not going to say the actors who play them, but the character Tequila, why wasn't he Whiskey and did what Whiskey's role did? I don't know.
Yeah, for me, that completely came down to the fact that he's a bigger actor and had less time to commit to the film.
Yes.
And the little sting on the end seemed like it was saying to the audience, like, oh, hey, but he'll come back with a bigger role next time.
Yes. Yeah, well, we'll see. They are signed for a Kingsman 3. Matthew Vaughn's already signed for it also, so there is a Kingsman 3 in the works announced. So we'll see how that goes. This movie, I'm assuming, seems like it's making some good money. We don't have box office numbers in there, but I think that it's going to be bringing enough money to warrant a sequel. I'm with you. Seems like we're complete agreements. I get a solid C also. I no desire to see this movie again, which is a bad thing. But anyway, let's switch over to spoilers to discuss it in more detail. Why don't you tell people where they can follow you on the
Violet.
internet?
For sure, you guys can find me on Twitter as well as on YouTube. Simply search Chris Hartwell or The Heartbeat on YouTube. Heart spelled Hart.
You can follow me at Shuckstr, that's SCHUCKSTR. Check out The Deuce Drop, our podcast on The Deuce with John Booker and my friend Gina Metallo. If anybody's checking that show out on HBO, which you should be, with James Franco and Maggie Gyllenhaal, it's a pretty good one. So check out that podcast. It's at thedeucedrop.com. For the show, you can follow us at The Watch and Talk. You can email us at thewatchtalk@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter or Instagram at The Watch and Talk. And go to our Facebook at facebook.com/thewatchandtalk. Next week, we're going to be reviewing American Made, so make sure to tune in for that. And I think we might do, we'll probably do our top 5 Tom Cruise movies. I don't think we've done that yet. But
we should definitely do that. That sounds fun.
But we do have to do the movies that top 5 most anticipated movies for the rest of the year list. So maybe we'll do that the following week.
Ooh,
we gotta figure out a good time to do that, because that needs to be priority. But anyway, without further ado, let's switch to spoilers. All right.
So let's just talk about the elephant in the room. Colin Firth was completely unneeded. They did not need to bring him back. They should not have brought him back.
No.
And even dumber, like, why spoil that in the trailer?
Yeah.
For me, the fact that they spoiled it in the trailer told me why they brought him back to begin with, which was people aren't going to want to come to this film unless Colin Firth is in it. So we not only need to bring him back, we need to tell them before they come to watch it that he's there. And it
just shows such a. I can't believe Matthew Vaughn would be okay with that. It just shows a lack of faith in the audience coming to see this movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's why they needed to give Jeff Bridges and Channing Tatum and Halle Berry and Julianne Moore and Pedro Pascal. Pedro Pascal's in the poster, but he's not. His name isn't big enough to be listed. But anyway.
And it's one of those things where, like, with Jeff Bridges and Channing Tatum and Halle Berry specifically, those 3 characters, non-parts, completely non-parts. They were there for a few scenes. So clearly, like, oh, they're busy with another job, but maybe we can get them in for a little bit and then throw their names on the poster and throw them
Halle
in the
Berry
trailer.
had more than the other 2, but I agree.
I guess it's true.
But also had no feelings when they killed off Mark Strong, especially because it was so weird that they were. He just came out and they were like, "What the hell's going on?" And he's singing, and a guard walks up to him and he hits him in the face and knocks him out, and then all the guards start walking up to him, and they know there's landmines out there.
Yeah, I just, that was confusing to me.
It also was confusing that he even needed to step on the landmine in the first place.
Right, it's like, so you took out the guards, but then after that, the 2 of them went in there and took out way more guys than just for the guards there. It's like his death felt completely inconsequential and unnecessary. It's like you didn't actually sacrifice yourself for a needed reason. Like, these guys can take out those guys no problem.
Yeah. And it was just it was so stupid to see them walking up to him. Like, I was like, what? They have guns. They're not swords.
Yeah.
Like, they should be shooting him at this point, right? Like, or not all at the same time walking up to him. It was just freaking silly. Everything was predictable. Everything. You called it. Everything was predictable, from her opening sequence with Julianne Moore to the dog being what was needed. Completely called that. To Pedro Pascal being a bad guy. Completely called that. Also, everyone watches Fox News. Okay. Because it's a 20th Century Fox movie, they have to have every single thing. Like, you need to have, at that point, you need to have a blank news screen, right? And not just play Fox News on every single TV.
Right.
Because it was like, why? Not all these people would be watching Fox News, but whatever. That's just, when Fox News has made such a political stance, which is fine. They feel like they're the fair one, and that CNN is making theirs, and that's fine, whatever. But to average people, Fox News is a right-wing news organization. So when you constantly only show every time you show news, it's only Fox News and Fox News anchors. It's obvious that it's the studio doing that because general public don't watch Fox News all the time. That's not in general the news that's watched. Also, the president was impeached for not negotiating with terrorists.
I think he was impeached because he told the people that he was, but then he was actually sentencing people to death. I think that was the issue right there.
Well, I guess it's impeachable because he seemed to have almost concentration camps. And they really tried hard to not give it that vibe of a concentration camp.
Sure. Well, I mean, it was funny too because I mentioned earlier the film Speed Racer from the Wachowskis. There were actually certain scenes in this film that had CG that was just as cartoony and not photoreal. Like the whole sequence within those stadiums in those bars was like that is so clearly fake. The entire thing is shot in the green screen. Like you could see like the nasty kind of feathering that was done on the Emily character. Emily, I think Emily Watson is her name.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
And what was her role? Was she the chief of staff or something?
That was what I was made to believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, she gets to impeach him. Doesn't make sense. Anyway. But also that the pacing for the disease or whatever the illness that it gives is it was off. Like his friend at his house got it.
He'd been frozen there for far too long.
Yeah, he got it. He got it like days before the princess did, Princess Tilde, and then they were going through the same pace later on. It was distracting. There's also a really, really stupid bar fight that happens that they wanted to recreate the scene where this is where Colin Firth's character had just finally snapped out of it, and he acted like he was walking out, but then he went to go lock the doors. Which
I remember because it was so dumb.
Yeah, and out of nowhere they were sitting there, and out of nowhere the guy just starts calling them, anti-gay slurs, and just starts talking crap to them out of nowhere. It was so out of the blue and out of nowhere, and then he needed to kill some of them. They stabbed some of them. Like they didn't show all the died, but they had, they're bad guys. They said some gay slurs, so they need to get killed. It was ridiculous. Also, really annoying. The Harry constantly seeing the butterflies.
Yeah. I mean that his whole character arc, where the way that he was brought out of it, just the personality that he was given, and then suddenly his ability to be back in it, and like the final fight sequence where he's kicking butt, like it just felt so uneven and unnecessarily paced, and they just did not work for me.
And she knows how to snap, Pedro Pascal whiskey out of it immediately. And the second that happened, we knew that he was a traitor. Right? It was obvious, right? They were like, there would be no way they would do this if it didn't end up him being a traitor. So there was no surprise there.
Right.
Like, there was no suspense to that. Because the whole time, we're like, okay, well, he is. They're not going to have Colin Firth having shot him and killed him on accident and him not actually be a traitor. Especially as soon as he comes out, he starts rushing to them. What's he doing that for, right? Okay, whatever. And then also, Elton John just kicking ass out of nowhere was just stupid. He's like, is that a rescue? Yeah. Boom! And then he's just kicking everybody's ass, and they're like, Elton. Yeah,
and him constantly breaking the fourth wall, looking at us and smiling. It's like it just, again, there was this desire to be quirky and funny and fresh, but it just didn't land for me a lot of the time.
Also, the beginning sequence when she's getting Angel and some other guy, right? But Angel's being recruited, and she's like, "Your friend screwed up. Kill him." And he's like, "Okay, no problem, and I'll just kill him." What did he do?
Well, did he do something wrong? It was just a test,
Okay, and then Angel screwed up by smoking weed with Elton John, I guess, or something, or doing coke with him, or whatever they did together. And then Angel has to get killed right afterward for, you're trying to make her look ruthless, but you're just making her look silly.
Right, and playing the same beat over and over again.
Right.
And another one of your goons screwed up, so kill him. And another one of your goons screwed up, so kill him.
It just seems like you waste your time. Like, you waste your time recruiting this guy if you're just going to kill him for stupid reasons? Because they obviously don't respect you because he went and did something a murderable offense behind the scenes with. But okay, what was the deal with the hamburger? That she made the meat out of the guy and then made him take a bite.
Well,
out
she's
of
just testing his loyalty. The fact that he'll go to any lengths to obey her orders.
Right, and then that was it. That
Yeah.
was all. We just saw that one little bit of sequence of that, and also I don't think you can just grind up a person with bone and just make perfect hamburger. And his clothes.
Again, very cartoony. Very cartoony.
And his clothes, and they even showed the clothes like the grinder separated his clothes. It was spitting clothes out the side. And no blood. But anyway, it was all. Also, I really don't want to see Elton John say "fuck" ever again. He just said it way too many times, and it was just
his favorite.
Whatever. And they tried to make the same joke about like. Okay, so the joke was pretty funny in the last one where he was like, "Hey, if I save the world, can I get a kiss?" She's like, "You can have a lot more than that if you save the world." And he's like, "All right." And she's like, "Actually, if you save it, or if you save me, you can get a lot more." And then she's like, "If you save the world, you can do it in my asshole." Like that was a joke from the first one. And then the second one, it was funny enough. It was funny enough. It was surprising. And then in this one, she's like, she saved the world. You know what that means again. And we're like, okay, like, really? Like, all right, you just ruined the fucking joke. And then to have the same joke with Elton John said later to Colin Firth, it was awkward and weird. And they
beating a dead horse.
They beat a bunch of dead horses from the last one. Also, they just killed off the girl, his girl partner, and it was just no.
Yeah, no, that was definitely, for me, that felt silly because, again, that almost felt like, oh, she's big stuff now. Contractually, we got to get her out of this quickly. Because it didn't feel like it upped the stakes that much because it only just had barely reestablished their connection.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, boom, she's gone.
We also barely, they should have shown, like, flame happening in front of her face so we can see that she blew up because I didn't even know that she was dead until, like, 15 minutes later.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, the same thing with when his mate Brandon and JB got killed. It should have showed flame happen in front of their face. Right? Like, I don't know. It just...
Dylan demands the flame in front of the face shot.
Yeah,
very important.
Anyway, whatever. This movie was just whatever. I can see having fun with it. It's not... again, it wasn't the biggest offense in the world. That's why I didn't put it in D territory. It's just... I don't know. I'm disappointed. They could have done better.
Yeah.
That's all.
Unnecessary.
All right. Why don't you tell people again where they can follow you on the internet?
Oh, for sure. You guys can find me on Twitter as well as on YouTube. Simply search Chris Hartwell or The Heartbeat on YouTube.
For me, you can follow me at Shuckster. That's SCHUCKSTR. And then for the podcast, you can go to our website, thewatchandtalk.com. Email us, thewatchtalk@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram or Twitter at thewatchandtalk or Facebook at facebook.com/thewatchandtalk. And that's it. I'm Dylan Shuck.
I'm Chris Hartwell.
And we'll see you next week.
Cheers. Boom.
All right. All righty.
Well done, sir.
We